capture devices. Can you hear me there, YouTube? Checking everybody out here. Let's see what we got. We can hear, but we can't see. Are you serious? Oh, because if it turns out you can't see, I'll lose my mind. I'll lose my freaking mind. I can't. That doesn't make any sense. Everybody good? How about YouTube? Nothing on YouTube? Good. Okay. Aces. Fantastic. All right. Well, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Nothing happened. It just plain turned it on and it did what it did. Good. Okay. Good. So looks like we're all here. Fantastic. Hope everybody's been well. As I was saying before, although the sound wasn't working, so nobody heard me, it's been a pretty tough week for your old Captain Bill here for a number of reasons. So I might as well just kind of go through them, I suppose. This is being recorded on Monday, the 15th, the Ides of April, for those of you not familiar with April 15th. And a week ago was the Great Solar Eclipse of 2024, which I've been looking forward to seeing since the last few seconds of the Great Solar Eclipse of 2017. About a week out from the eclipse date, the weather looked like it was going to be not just partly cloudy, but a front coming in Sunday night, solid overcast. And I waited until about 3 or 4 days before the eclipse before I finally said, not going. The weather was still showing just continuous rain. There were some severe weather warnings for area around Fort Worth. We were going to stop at Sedona on the way back because Natasha wanted to see Sedona and Painted Desert. So instead of going to Texas, we went and did that. I called my friend Phil, or texted him on the morning of the eclipse just as it was starting. And he sent me back a picture of completely clouded over skies and said, you made the right call. Because it's a 23-hour drive from here to there and a 23-hour drive back. So I was in Sedona with Natasha, poking around. She was doing some shopping. And somebody gave me one of those eclipse glasses, and I was looking up there, and I saw about 50% coverage. And then we sat down for some breakfast before we took off because we got there on Saturday night. Spent all day Sunday there. And then on Monday afternoon, while I'm just having lunch just before I hit the road for Painted Desert and so on with Natasha, I texted Phil and asked him, were you able to see anything at all? And he said, yeah, it was unbelievable. Bailey's beads, the whole 9 yards. It was some miracle. It cleared 10 minutes before totality, something like that. And I just looked at this text in my hand as I'm sitting there, and I just tossed the phone onto the table, and I've kind of been in shock ever since then. I can't tell you how much I was looking forward to that. And it is without a doubt the worst disappointment I've had since missing Apollo 17 when I was 11 or something. Went to bed half an hour before, or 20 minutes before the launch, which was delayed, and I remember the feeling when my mom came home and said, "Wasn't it unbelievable?" I had that exact same feeling, for about 3 days, I just first thought I had when I woke up was I missed the eclipse. I missed it. I missed it. If it had been partly cloudy, if it had been anything other than a 5-day front moving in, I would have done it. I would have risked it. And Eric says, isn't that what exactly you predicted? Yes. So thanks, Eric. Thanks for rubbing it in. It just was some kind of a miracle, apparently. So my 65th birthday was the day before that. Those two items hitting back to back didn't sweeten my mood any. And I knew that when I got back, if I'd really made an effort to get back by Tuesday morning, it'd be nothing but Scott talking about how great the eclipse was, and I just couldn't bear it. Now, as it turned out, we didn't get out of the Painted Desert until about 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night on Monday. and that was a 9-hour drive back, but it wasn't a 23-hour drive back. So yeah, it was a punch in the face. Just before I left, did an ultrasound on my cat Bean. He's got a significant sized tumor. They did a biopsy. I thought I'd have the results by today, but I'll probably get them tomorrow. If it's benign, then he'll probably be okay. But the chance of it being benign is very low. So probably he's got a month left, something like that. And also, two of my good friends are both very, very ill. And so it's been one of those weeks, 27 total solar eclipse in Greenland. Yes, I've heard it's also going into Spain. I just want to go where people aren't. So I've never been to Greenland, so I just promised myself I'd go. But just a combination of hitting 65 and then the next day thinking, well, I'm disappointed because I didn't get to see the eclipse, but there was no way possible for me to see it, because if there'd been a 3% chance of going, I would have gone. But that's not what the weather report said. So there it is. Things that I otherwise would have been somewhat excited about, I was just like in a state of shock. As we were heading out to the Painted Desert, there was a sign on the road that said Meteor Crater, and I thought, oh, I guess we must be fairly near Barringer Meteor Crater. And it turns out we were. So we got off on that exit, drove about 7 miles, and for the low price of $58, the two of us got a chance to step in and see this gigantic meteor crater, which had been one of the things I'd wanted to see my whole life. Ever since I first saw pictures of it, I thought, wow, that's got to be really amazing. Now, part of that was me being heavily sedated, and the other part was, I don't know, I was just in shock. They put in this super elaborate visitor center with, multimedia displays and 5 levels of gift shop and, all that stuff. And I got out there and I took a look at it and I thought, well, that's the Barringer Meteor Crater, all right. There's no question about that. And it was considerably smaller than I thought it would be. It wasn't small, but it was considerably smaller than I thought it would be. We went out and did the Painted Desert and got done just as the sun was setting. There was a rain cloud over the Painted Desert. Would have been nice to see that in bright sunlight, but it turns out that the rain cloud that was supposed to be covering the eclipse that day was actually covering the Painted Desert. So it was one of those days, and in one of those weeks. So got Zoe to sit on the shows for me, and I'm still behind on getting those things out. So yeah, I've been sitting around a lot just staring at the walls. Might as well just get it all over with, I suppose. I had, when I was writing the Frank Luke thing, I had promised myself when I was finished I would get a VR headset for the DCS experience. I went with the Pimax Crystal, which is supposed to be the top of the line in terms of sharpness and clarity. And I put it on, and sure enough, everything's in 3D, and the cockpit felt like it's about this big, and you can't zoom in or anything. And if you want to look behind you, you have to turn your head all the way around. I had C5, C6 fusion done back in the early 90s, so I couldn't do that. And I'd been looking forward to that headset for 8 months, I think, honestly, just keeping it out there like a reward for getting this thing done. And if anybody wants to buy a Pimax Crystal in mint condition, it's in perfect condition. It works perfectly. I'm just not a VR guy. I just don't have the flexibility for it. It's a fairly heavy headset. It's the best headset out there, and it is in mint condition. Refueling was kind of fun in 3D, but everything else in terms of DCS was just, I I don't know. It's not even an uncomfortable headset. So it's a big headset. It's heavy. I just didn't have the that 4K sharpness that a really good monitor has. So I'm just getting disappointments all over the place this last 7 days. So that's kind of where we're starting from today. I actually have what I'm about to show you. I got this in Sedona, believe it or not, at a gift shop in Sedona. I did not get this at the Behringer Meteor Crater, but Natasha was shopping at one of those groovy little stores in groovy little Sedona, and it was one of these places that had all of these crystals, and she just loves crystals. She makes her own jewelry with various kinds of crystals and stuff, and there was some spectacular stuff in there. Just as we were leaving, he was talking about all the different things he had, and all the different things they had something made out of. I said, "You have anything made out of meteorites, do you?" He says, "Oh yeah, we got meteorites." So there are basically two kinds of meteors. There are stony meteors and iron meteors. The stony meteors are called chondrites, or sometimes carbonaceous chondrites. But the nickel iron ones are different. And so Natasha, for a birthday present, purchased me this tiny little piece of a nickel iron asteroid, which experts say is almost certainly from the asteroid Psyche. Psyche is what is it? Is it 8 trillion, 40 trillion? It's a gigantic hunk of very pure nickel iron out in the asteroid belt. Unlike all of the other asteroids that I'm aware of, Psyche is apparently a failed core of a planet. It's almost completely metallic. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on the webcam, but there's something about meteorites that is almost unbelievable. I really hope you can see the detail. Yeah, you can see that structure there. That kind of really strange crystalline structure is unlike anything else on the Earth. I mean, it looks painted on. Sorry, I can't focus that close, but maybe you can. In any event, I like this one because it's got a nice little piece of surface area too, where it came in contact with the Earth's atmosphere. So I have a little piece of another planetoid out there, sitting here on my desk, which is nice to know that those things are for real. I'd love to tell you more transcendental stories of how the eclipse was the most amazing thing. $10 quintillion, something like that. It's a lot of money. It's just basically a gigantic, miles and miles and miles across hunk of pure iron that we don't have to lift out of the Earth's gravity pool. So Psyche is the place to go. I kind of want to say there's a mission to Psyche that's either on its way or that they're talking about doing. Be curious to know what's happening, and I'm also curious to know when they get to Psyche if there's a slot taken out of Psyche that's about these dimensions with this nice right angle cut out of it. They had a bunch of stony meteorites. They also had some. I almost bought it too. They also had some Trinity glass, this green, fuzzy-looking stuff. That was basically sand that was vaporized by the Trinity explosion test in 1945 in July, I want to say. The first of the atomic bombs that the Oppenheimer movie was all about. They just fused the sand into glass at a significant radius, and I'll buy that too. But I got my little meteorite, so that's pretty cool. It's Monday, so can we talk about the Fallout TV show now? Sure, we can talk about anything we want on Mondays. The Fallout TV show, I don't know anything about. I know about the video game. I haven't seen any TV really of any kind, honestly. That's not true. We did see one movie that I really did like very much. Very much, surprisingly good little movie I'd never even heard of. It was on a recommendation. It was called The Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect, as in Nelson Mandela. That is a super cool little movie. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's a small film, but it is really brilliant and brilliantly written, and it really... I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it does have an awful lot to do with, well, I mean, it's essentially about the simulation theory of the universe, the idea that you and me and everything we see is all a simulation, and Elon Musk thinks the probability of this is 98% or something along those lines. There's a compelling argument for this all being a simulation. I just don't know, doesn't feel right to me. And Psyche asteroid mission will arrive in orbit in 2029. Great, 5 years to go. Yeah, that mission will be cool because Psyche, we've seen a lot of asteroids now. I remember when we saw the first asteroids. I remember when we first saw the picture of anything that was like an asteroid, which was when Mariner 9 sent back pictures of Phobos and Deimos, the moons of Mars, which are captured asteroids. We had no idea what they looked like prior to that. If you look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, you'll see they're very sharp-edged when they're tumbling around like that. But we've been to, I don't know how many we've been to now. It's got to be certainly 10, and it's got to be probably closer to 20. And they're all pretty much rock piles. But Psyche, that's a different story. Yeah, I kind of agree with Dave Big Booty on this. This is the Mandela effect is BS. People just have bad memories. Basically, the Mandela effect is about the Mandela effect. It's a good movie anyway. Is that people, large groups of people, remember things incorrectly, and the movie uses this premise as kind of a glitch in the matrix kind of a thing. It's still a really remarkable movie, and I thought was very entertaining. But I agree. Basically, what it is just people with false memories. Apparently, it was named because a significant number of people are certain that they remember that Nelson Mandela died while in prison. I've never been a victim to that error, because I remember being, I don't know how old I was, but I remember waiting on television. There was this telephoto lens, and it was waiting for him to walk out of the prison live. And I think I waited for well over an hour. Just crowds of people in the distance, and this speck starts walking out, and it's Nelson Mandela walking out of prison. So I don't remember him dying in prison. Some of them are strange, some of them aren't. One of the interesting ones is these phenomenon is the Monopoly man, the man on the Monopoly game. Many people, when they visualize him with a monocle. Doesn't have a monocle, and a bunch of other things like that, where people have shared errors. They large numbers of people misremember the same event, and some of them are small little things like Looney Tunes. The if you think about the Looney Tunes cartoons and the opening logo. Apparently, many people are 100% sure that it's Looneytoons, as in tunes, like cartoons, too. But it's actually Tunes. Couldn't knock me over with a feather when I found out that was the case. I didn't have an opinion on it much either way. But in any event, it was an interesting movie. Well, what was interesting about it, though, is having just by weird coincidence seen something on some real advanced particle physics stuff, where they're basically saying that there's good evidence that particles don't exist unless they're observed, and that seems counterintuitive in so many ways. But there's a lot of stuff that turns out to be at least strong evidence for that's counterintuitive. The whole quantum world is bizarrely counterintuitive. Our perception of the time, I've talked about time many times before on this show. Maybe I've only talked about it once. But I think there's something to this idea. And this is what leads people to think that this is a simulation. In other words, we're getting so good at simulating things now. We're simulating realities through things like Unreal Engine, which I'm pretty familiar with by now. And so, for example, in Unreal Engine, if you're the player, and you look around the world and you just sort of pan around, the computer's not rendering the stuff that's behind you. It's not, there's no computing power going to that. If you're facing a cathedral and you turn away and you look at an open plain, it's rendering the plain, but it's not rendering the cathedral. The cathedral just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist until you turn around again and it's in your field of view. Once you observe it, the computer has to allocate resources to render it. And there is some evidence that particles are behaving in some, and not just particles, but matter is behaving somehow in similar ways, where it behaves differently depending on whether or not somebody's looking at it. And that to me is interesting. It gets to the point where, of course, where it doesn't really matter. I mean, if it turns out that this whole thing is a simulation, people are saying it's not real. It's like, well, what does that mean? You know, I mean, what do you mean it's not real? Of course, it's real. Where you can get to the point where you can say, well, if this is all simulation, what difference does it make? What's the reality beyond that? I'm sure the reality that's, if this is a simulation, the reality that's beyond this simulation is completely unknowable to us and beyond our ability to experience. So, as far as we're concerned, this is the reality. So people are bringing up some of these Mandela effect things, like he never says, Luke, I am your father. He just says, no, I am your father. In Casablanca, he never says, play it again, Sam. He just says, play it again. There are a number in Hamlet. Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well, Horatio. It doesn't say that. It's alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio. Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well. I never said that. But these are just either faulty memories or pithier versions of statements and sayings that people just misquote, and then they're misquoted, and they're misquoted forever, and off you go. I put something up on my Facebook page I liked very much today. I'll read it to you because I'm a little low on enthusiasm and energy this last week. This I thought was very clever, just funny. If you haven't seen it already, then this will be a treat for you. And if you already have, then you can just skip ahead. Did I put it there? Oh, it didn't go up. It must have gone up on my own private page. All right, well, I'll read it from my private page. I just thought it was clever. Come back. Yes, never mind. So here's, I wrote, this is Mein Kampf for grammar Nazis. It's some of them won't translate. I'm just going to read them anyway. I don't care. An Oxford comma walks into a bar where it spends the evening watching television, comma, getting drunk, comma, and smoking cigars. A dangling participle walks into a bar. Enjoying a cocktail and chatting with the bartender, the evening passes pleasantly. A bar was walked into by the passive voice. An oxymoron walked into a bar and the silence was deafening. Two quotation marks walk into a bar. A malapropism walks into a bar looking for all intensive purposes like a wolf in cheap clothing, muttering epitaphs and casting dispersions on his magnificent other who takes him for granite. Hyperbole totally rips into this insane bar and absolutely destroys everything. A question mark walks into a bar. A non sequitur walks into a bar. In a strong wind, even turkeys can fly. Papyrus and Comic Sans walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Get out, we don't serve your type." A mixed metaphor walks into a bar, seeing the handwriting on the wall, but hoping to nip it in the bud. A comma splice walks into a bar, it had a drink, and then it leaves. Three intransitive verbs walk into a bar. They sit, they converse, they depart. A synonym strolls into a tavern. At the end of a day, a cliché walks into a bar, fresh as a daisy, cute as a button, and sharp as a tack. A run-on sentence walks into a bar. It starts flirting with a cute sentence fragment. Falling slowly, softly falling, the chiasmus collapses to the bar floor. And a figure of speech literally walks into a bar and ends up getting figuratively hammered. An illusion walks into a bar despite the fact that alcohol is its Achilles heel. The subjective would have walked into the bar if only it had known. A misplaced modifier walks into a bar owned by a man with a glass eye named Ralph. The past, present, and future walk into a bar. It was tense. A dyslexic walks into a bra. A verb walks into a bar, sees a beautiful noun, and suggests they conjugate. The noun declines. A simile walks into a bar as parched as a desert. A gerund and an infinitive walk into a bar drinking to forget. And finally, a hyphenated word and a non-hyphenated word walk into a bar, and the bartender nearly chokes on the irony because hyphenated word is not hyphenated, but non-hyphenated word is hyphenated. There you go. Hope that was the worth the effort. Okay, so there you go. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to just go straight to questions. Why don't I? Voice is a little iffy today too, mostly from all of the screaming. So let's see what we can come up with here. Hoping to have some better news on some. Well, I won't have any better news about the eclipse next week, that's for sure. But at least now I can say the word eclipse for 3 days. I was just gobsmacked, just brokenhearted. That's the only word for it. Just absolutely brokenhearted. I couldn't believe it. Not just missing the eclipse, but missing everybody else. You know, we were going to have a lot of fun there, and it's like, nope, it's going to be raining. It's going to start raining the day before. It's going to rain continuously, nonstop for 3 days, and then there it is. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Eric, for curating these Stratopop questions for 4/15/24. Let's see what we come up with here. Okay, let me see. I got here's Marusha Dark, who I haven't heard from a long time, so we'll definitely do that. I got Jazer McFarland, Jane Waterman, Ian, Jacob. We've got an Eric Blake about Disney and the board again. So let's get all of them done, and then I think I might just have to ease my way back into these things because I am stressed, mostly just stress. So let's start with Eric here. When we last left the fight for the Disney board of directors, it was a matter of days before the shareholder meeting. Well, that's come and gone, and Iger and the mainstream media are calling it a win for him and a loss for Nelson Peltz and Elon Musk. Mistake, of course, is to assume that Peltz and crew are not in this for the long haul. Lo and behold, he's announced that he'll be watching this year, and if Disney continues to neglect to reform, he'll be back and just might campaign for more seats than 2 next time. As for our starman, it's pretty much given he would have joined the fight, but for the stupid Delaware lawsuit that's prevented his worthy Tesla compensation package. But he has strongly implied his plans for the next vote, and he and Peltz have reportedly met up more than a few times. Okay, and let me finish the question. A couple things to say. Now, what does this lead to for us? Well, I speak not to disprove what Doomcock spoke, for Doomcock is an honorable man, but I am here to speak what I do know. For all the talk about Disney is dead, etc., to invoke Miracle Max of the Princess Bride, the Disney legacy is only mostly dead. There's a difference between mostly dead and all dead, and mostly dead means slightly alive. By all accounts, the richest and most financially successful man in the world would seem to agree. Thusly, I'd say by all means, sell the Disney stock while it's currently on this temporary high point, provided when it inevitably plummets again, we buy up even more shares with said profit, this time to show up again next year's meeting in force. Okay, so that's the Disney story again. The only thing I can really add to this that is of any interest, and I think this had to do with Paramount, and I don't know if it was from Doomcock or somewhere else, but there are hints and allegations of people getting to the point where they're getting ready to say, where stockholders in Paramount and Disney are beginning to think about, uh, you know, oh, for God's sake, they're basically trying to do a class action suit, and they're claiming that this is malfeasance on the part of the board of directors, that these are entertainment companies, and that by allowing and encouraging these endless, woke, ideologically focused movies and products to come out, they have knowingly reduced the value of the property. They have knowingly destroyed the value of the shareholder shares. That's a compelling argument. I think it's a very compelling argument, actually. For an entertainment company, your product is entertainment. It's not like, it's not, look, as Peter Gruber famously said, I've told it a million times, I'll tell it again just because it's a great story. He was trying to explain, when he was brokering the sale of Columbia to the Japanese, he was trying to explain to them, to Sony, how the film business worked, and he basically said to the owner of Sony and the board of directors of Sony, he said, we basically will make 10 films a year, a slate of 10 films, and of those 10 films, 4 of them will be failures, 3 of them will do okay, and then the other 3 will be hits, and the hits should hopefully cover the cost of all 10 of them. And the chairman of the board of Sony, who manufactures things, said, well, why don't you just make the hits? So that's the defense that Paramount or Disney can claim, and that is that nobody can predict what a hit is going to be. In fact, because we're remaking our old hits, we are diligently doing our very best to protect our product and make successful movies. But you can't do that forever. I mean, you could get away for that for a couple of years, but it's clear as daylight now that if you want to make the Adventures of Robin Hood, you know, and you want to cast a black lesbian as Robin Hood, then you can do that. But the outcome of the movie, if Paramount were to make The Adventures of Robin Hood, let's assume that they owned that property, and they were to cast a black lesbian as Robin Hood, I think any competent lawyer, I certainly could make the case that this is intentional sabotaging of shareholder value in order to make ideological points that benefit nobody but the CEOs and the absolute upper level executives, that they know for a certain fact that this is going to lose money. They know for a certain fact that it's going to degrade the value of the brand, and therefore they are criminally malfeasant. And I think that is a compelling argument that can be made against these companies, against virtually all of them. And without a question, they can be made against the owners of the big franchises. The reason I told the Peter Gruber story is because it's lightning in a bottle. Nobody can predict, nobody can really predict what's actually going to happen. But with that said, in terms of individual movies, especially with a new movie, but you can say something to the effect of, I could tell a jury, for example, if I was arguing this case for the shareholders, I could tell a jury that if I told you that we're remaking Robin Hood, and in the role of Robin Hood, we're going to cast a progressive black lesbian, and the story is going to be about the evils of capitalism, a jury would be able, any rational jury would be able to say, okay, well, that's fine, but that's not Robin Hood. And if I can convince people that that's not Robin Hood, then you essentially win the argument. We own Robin Hood, assuming that we did, right? We own Robin Hood, and we know what Robin Hood is, and the jury knows what Robin Hood is, and we are making a movie that is not only not Robin Hood, it's anti-Robin Hood, and so therefore we're intentionally destroying the value of our own company and our own assets in order to look good at cocktail parties. And I think at that point, you could really start talking about this kind of thing, where but that really begs a larger question, frankly, and this is kind of why I'm not particularly, Nothing against, Eric, who's so deep in this fight, and he's right about so many of these things. But I'm at that point where I just don't care. I really don't. I don't care, and I haven't cared about it for a long time. I do care about Disneyland and Disney World. Those are magical places, and it would be a real shame for those things to disappear, because I was young enough to go to Disney. The first Disney experience was at Disney World in 1972, just before it opened. My dad was hotel manager, and we got a chance to go up about 2 weeks before it opened to the public. And when I lived in Florida, I must have gone to Disney World 15 times. I've been to Disneyland out here 5-6 times. Going to Disney as a child, Disneyland especially, or Disney World especially, is a magical experience. It is genuinely an astonishing place to go. And I would hate to see that vanish. But as far as the rest of it goes, Eric says they want us to no longer care. They don't want to break us, not give up. Bill, don't give in. I'm not giving up, and I'm not giving in. I just think that Disney is permanently damaged, and I don't see any reason to stay on a ship that's sinking. I'm not giving up on entertainment. I'm not giving up on the idea of winning in entertainment. I just don't see any reason to stick by a brand that's got that much damage. I don't see how you recover it. I don't see how you recover Star Wars at this point. These trailers for The Acolyte, were, got all these Jedi in a room, and it's all little girls sitting there, and then a couple of boys of color, and that's it. And I would like a Star Wars that looks like the audience, which is 70% white male. So I don't see any way to unscrew Star Wars. I don't see any way to unscrew Star Trek, which is much closer to my heart, frankly. That's why there were some cross signals with Doom Caucus, who was on a show last week or the week before. I hope I didn't backfoot him, but he thought we were both going to review the first 2 episodes of the final season of Discovery, and I haven't seen any of Discovery. I wanted to talk about the difference between Discovery and Star Trek. So one way or another, either with him or hopefully with him in the near future, I really want to do the OK Boomer guide to what is and what is not Star Trek. And I don't know how, if somebody gave me Star Trek and said, save it, I think I could do that really quite easily. Because basically I would just take the colonies and I'd put them into Starfleet. I'd get back to exploration. I'd go to strange new worlds. I wouldn't go to planet whose culture is there to hammer a lesson into the mind of the people watching. And I wouldn't go to and my strange new worlds would be filled with aliens that were not variations on people, like people with ridges here, or were the people that have bumps here, or the aliens are people that have, lines here. I'd go with actual alien-looking aliens, and interacting with them, just trying to figure out their language, how to communicate. That would be a big part of it, and I'd blow this Prime Directive thing right out the window. That's the first thing I would do. I would get rid of that piece of subversive garbage. The Prime Directive, if you don't know what the Prime Directive is in Star Trek, you're really, kind of new to the show. Probably have no idea who these 2 guys are, but the idea is worth mentioning, even though I mentioned it, I think, last time. In the original series, the Enterprise is America. Starfleet is America. The United Federation of Planets is America. Starfleet is the U.S. Navy. And it is a diverse group of people on the bridge of the Enterprise, but they're not diverse because they're DEI hires. They're diverse because there's a world where prejudice is no longer holding people back. And it bears mentioning that not only was the idea of a capable, intelligent, authoritative black woman shocking to some people, Martin Luther King personally told Nichelle Nichols she can't leave the show. She wanted to leave after the first season. He said to her, you cannot leave the show. It's too important. What you're providing is too important. But this is 20 years after the end of World War II, and you've got a Japanese helmsman. You've got bad feelings left there. You're in the middle of a Cold War with the Russians. You got a Russian navigator. All the Vulcans were always getting all the good grades at school and raising the curve, so you get these Vulcans that everybody hates. And so it was diverse, but it wasn't diverse for the sake of diversity. It was these were the best people in the fleet. I look at Discovery, and I don't get the sense that anybody anywhere in any of those shows is the best at anything. All I see are a bunch of whiny crybabies or attitude-driven, smartasses. And I don't see any competence anywhere. I've always felt that Discovery was where they, like Discovery is like the laundry ship where they put all the discipline cases who they can't fire anymore because if they do, Starfleet's going to get sued. That kind of thing. And so, so Star Trek is not about. Star Trek is about excellence, and that doesn't have to be stated. It's just clear. Wasn't Chekhov a season 3 edition? I think Chekhov was a season 2 edition. And a lot of that had to do with the Monkees, and the Beatles, and they wanted somebody appealed to younger audiences with the Beatles mop top haircut and all of that. And I like Chekhov. I always liked Chekhov. I like him better than Walter Koenig. But I always thought Chekhov was a fun character. I just never got Sulu at all. Never. I had nothing against him. I just thought Captain Sulu. By the way, let me just get this out of my system. Fortunately, it's Monday night. George Takei has one line in the entire Star Trek canon. In all of the things that he did, I want to say 72 episodes, but it might have been 78. The 70 plus episodes, plus the 6 movies and all the rest of it. There's only one time that Sulu ever said anything, ever, where I went, yeah! Now, Scotty said that kind of stuff all the time. Kirk would say it every other word. McCoy would say it, and something, or Spock would say something. Scotty every now and then, no, sir, I'll not lower the screens. Yeah! The only time Sulu ever said anything ever was when they were going to rescue the Enterprise in the 6th movie, in the Undiscovered Country, and he's basically on the edge of his seat, and he says, "We got to get there." And he says, "Can't, sir. We can't go any faster. You'll shake to pieces. You'll shake her to pieces. You'll fly her to pieces. Oh, fly her apart, then," he says, and that was a great moment. Fly her apart, then. If we go any faster, the ship will fly apart. Fly her apart, then. That was a cheer line. It's the only one he's got. But what I find so interesting about that is that when you first see Sulu, the first time you see Sulu in the captain chair, the first thing you see of Sulu as captain is you're looking down and there's a saucer, a porcelain saucer, and a porcelain teacup. And it says USS Enterprise or USS Excelsior. And he's got this thing, and I think he has his pinky extended. And he takes a little sip, just a little sip of tea. It's like, and I just thought, well, I'll just come out and tell you what I thought. This is so gay. You can't be the captain of a starship and be that gay. If you want to do that in your locker room or in your cabin, okay. It's like the guy, the actor from, what was it, Hill Street Blues, who was the captain of the Excelsior in the Search for Spock. He's got his swagger stick and he's buffing his nails. Okay, we get what kind of guy that is, but he's not buffing his nails in the captain's chair. And it was so. It was such a. Everything that you see on a screen is a choice, right? Everything's a choice. Nothing shows up on the screen by accident. It's either a choice. It's either a choice that the writers made, or the director makes, or maybe the actor makes a suggestion. The director either likes it or agrees to it because whatever, but it's a choice. And I just thought, what are you trying to say? Because you could have gone with something that would have made shake her to fly her apart. Then that was great. That was great. James B. Sicking, yes, that's who it was. You could have had Sulu enter strong. He could have come in strong. And that would have impressed me. And then I wouldn't have had this attitude about Sulu. But when you start with it and that look on his face, oh, perfect. Oh, yes. I've dreamed my entire life of sitting in this chair and being able to sip tea in front of the crew and show everybody how delightful my sense of taste is. Oh, this is, it's even Picard, who I have a low opinion of, at least had the class and decency to do that in his ready room, right? I mean, I don't think he ever sat there on the bridge, Earl Grey hot, and sipped this thing. It's an affection. It's an affection. You call yourself a half Brit? I've got nothing against tea. Nothing against tea. But it's like, yeah, fancy is a better word. That's a better word. That's a better word than that's a better word than gay. It's fancy. It's an affectation. That's what it is. It's an affectation. The riding crop is an affectation. I almost said Kirk doesn't have any affectations, but the way William Shatner delivers lines is an affectation. It's just an affectation I happen to like. It's just, yeah, Eric's right. It's too fabulous. Why? Why did you do that? Why? I don't understand it. I don't understand that choice. Because Sulu, and I didn't think it was possible, but Sulu genuinely got a cheer out of me when I saw that movie in the theater, We're going too fast, we're going too fast, Captain Earl Grey, Oh, well, I'll extend my pinky and we'll take us down another warp. It's like, shake her, fly her to pieces then. It's like, all right, that's what I want to see. That's what you need to have to be sitting in that chair. So I got a bunch of other things that I can bitch about in the OK Boomer's Guide to Star Trek. One of the things that I'm going to mention is that Starfleet doesn't change its uniform every 3 months. I just think that's. It's like you'll see that with Marvel too. Every movie they have to change the outfits. Even when they get them perfect, they have to keep changing them. They can't be the same. I think that's ridiculous. I don't know how many uniforms they went through on the seasons of Star Trek Discovery, but I know it's got to be 6. You don't need to change your uniforms every 6 months, I think the Army changing its uniforms back to the 1940s style is insulting and stupid. I think it's stolen valor, frankly. For those of you not familiar, several years ago, the Army changed its uniform to reflect more of a World War II look, which I think is just stolen valor. You haven't earned that look. In fact, that look doesn't belong to you, and it never will belong to you. Why don't you go and do something heroic enough to make your new uniforms look like something other people would want to emulate? Castellan said it's merchandising. It's not merchandising. It's just poking things. See, it's just constantly poking. It's this. Gotta change this. Gotta change this. Gotta change this. How many times did they change the bridge of the Enterprise? The bridge of the Enterprise class, rebuilt Constitution class, was the same, and but that's only because it changed between 1 and 2, didn't it? All I remember about movies 3, 4, 5, and 6 is that the Enterprise bridge looked different every time, and therefore I have no memory of what the Enterprise bridge looked like. Do it once. I wasn't a super huge fan of the Wrath of Khan uniforms. I liked them okay, but I wasn't like crazy big fan of them. But at least they kept them, as David Booty points out, they kept them for about 50 years of in-game or in-series time. But this changing them all the time and 50 different versions of them, it's like, no. And Lord Bios says changing the bridge with the new classes of ships makes sense. At least, yes, if you have a new class of ships, you have to have a new bridge. No question about that. But the Enterprise, I can't even bring myself to say Enterprise A, but the Enterprise A had at least 3 or 4 different bridge configurations. And it never looked the same from one movie to another, at least as far as I remember it. And they also have, you'd think they would get over this too. Although we're past this point, fortunately. So you look at the graphics from 2001: A Space Odyssey back there. Look at the displays, the instrument displays for 2001: A Space Odyssey. They're perfect. They hold up perfectly. They look so good. They look good when I saw them in 1968. I could make sense out of them. I mean, I couldn't give you exact data, but things like the acceleration curves look like acceleration curves, and certainly the heartbeats, and have HIB for hibernation, and NAV for navigation, and COM for communications, all that stuff. All those displays on all of the screens, on all of those nice flat screens in 2001 looks great. And the reason they look great is because we didn't have computer graphics yet. And then you go, presumably 10 years into the future, to 2010, and when you see that movie, they've got graphics that are done by the Apple IIe, or the 2C, Apple IIc. In living VGA, you get green, cyan, and white. And these wireframe things. And the reason that 2001 looked so good was because they were all hand-drawn. They were hand-drawn and hand-animated. They just took diagrams and made out the diagrams and photographed them and flashed them moving around. But you look at the CG graphics on Wrath of Khan, like just look at the numbers when they give in the code for the Reliant. It's like 6, square. It's terrible. Anyway. Yeah, I had to get that out of my system. So moving on here. Let's see what we got. Marusha Dark. I don't know if Marusha Dark is here. I haven't seen Marusha Dark, but I sure do wonder if Marusha Dark is okay. I haven't seen he or she, him or her, in a long time. Him or her. I hope everything's okay with Marusha. Topic: wish fulfillment. Right up my alley. Continuing on the Disney train. Okay. Recently watched the movie Wish. I'm normally pretty permissive when it comes to this sort of thing, but even I felt this movie was really bad overall. All in all, it had tremendous potential, but failed spectacularly in its execution, trying to pay homage to Disney's legacy on the one hand, but merely wearing it as a skin suit on the other. I was wondering if you considered watching it and doing an analysis of your own as an ephemera video, perhaps using your skill as a writer and editor to say how it might have been saved and turned into something great instead of what we got. In other words, how can you make a story about an all-powerful magic and wish fulfillment that still teaches moral lessons with character development? Perhaps something along the lines of another Chris Pine film, Wonder Woman 1984, where the lesson is about sacrifice, personal growth, and being careful what you wish for, as you just might get it and at what cost. I'm going to come back to what I said earlier, Marcia. And I don't know how else to say. I just don't care about it. I don't care. I can't think of a product out there that I do care about. I used to care deeply about these things. I know the Star Wars fans are done. They're just done. They're not even going to tune in to see how bad Acolyte is. They're just done. So. I've got a super chat from Crispy Mofo here. Thank you. It says, well, the set burned down between Star Trek 2 and 3, but Star Trek 5 and 6 were supposed to be a few years apart, and computer tech always upgrades. Fair enough. I just don't remember them in any way. I don't have a locked-in vision. But in any event, that's that. So as far as taking a look at it, I'm going to decline with thanks on that. I've still got so much to get off the ground here, but I just don't care, and I'm trying to think of the last thing I saw that was new. That was like, wow. Something tells me there was one or two things, but I, for the life of me, can't remember them. So, Zeppelinizer says, I was a Star Wars fan, and you're right, I'm done. We're just done. It's like, you've done it. Congratulations. The Force is female. And now you can have all of your transgender characters, bringing in that vast transgender science fiction revenue stream that used to be inhabited by geeky white males. So, yeah, Andrew DeLay says he was done at Last Jedi. I never even saw The Rise of Skywalker. I'm sorry, I missed your earlier super chats. I'll go back up there, Lapco. Think about that. You Star Wars fan who never saw what was it called? See, I can't remember the name of it. Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi, and then Rise of Skywalker. Nobody saw it. I didn't see. There was a Star Trek movie with Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and Dr. McCoy that I just didn't see. I still haven't seen, and that's the third of the Kelvin verse Star Treks where the Enterprise gets destroyed again. You know, guys, when you destroyed the Enterprise after, I don't know, 82, so 15 years, something like that, it really hurt in Search for Spock. When you saw the Enterprise go the first time, it really hurt. But if you destroy the Enterprise every episode or every movie, then who cares? Who cares? It's just lazy. It's lazy. You want them on a planet so they can ride motorcycles? I don't care. Not much interested in watching motorcycle stunts for my Star Trek experience. So, congratulations. Here we go. Lubko, Set and Stare to the Walls. Gee, if only I had a good comedy movie to watch. I've got to get this movie watched before I'm pinned to a wall, and all I have to say is it better be the best movie ever made. I'm actually sure it is very good. I don't have a DVD player, so I have to... I've got one in a box at home someplace, so I'll have to bring that in and take a look at it. So, sorry about that. Anyway, I'm just past caring, and it's just been a, I don't know, it's been a really hard week, and just sit around and, kind of weak. But that was last week. This is this week, so got to move on here. I would like to see something original, and I realize obviously I'm gonna have to make that happen myself. Jazer McFarlane, cool name, cool looking avatar. Looks like Jazer McFarlane, and his avatar here looks like captain of a Federation starship. Not the kind of guy you'd want to mess around with, but certainly reasonable and not out of his mind on a power trip. That's what I take out of this. So here we go. Number one question. In our upcoming science fiction series, The Colonies, I feel like while exploring the new solar systems, it would need to have something more fantastic than a total solar eclipse, if that be possible. The only way I can envision something being as incredible is making it last for hours or days, which I think would actually make it less incredible personally. Making the event physically closer to the planet with bigger objects and vision, total eclipse, but using Jupiter or Saturn or a similar planet. Also, I had a thought of having a supermassive black hole eating a star or two and seeing that all the time. Nerd out with me and think of what scientifically possible, believable could tap into all the power computer graphics has to offer. And then there comes an Oklahoma total eclipse report, which I'll get to in a minute. Just to bag on Neil deGrasse Tyson every single chance I get. He's done it more than once. He thinks he's being deep when he says, if aliens were to visit our solar system, they wouldn't even stop at Earth. They wouldn't even stop at Earth, the blue planet with freestanding water and, millions, hundreds of millions of different species interacting with each other. No, they'd be interested in Jupiter, which is big and beautiful, or Saturn, which has rings. Well, we found out that rings pretty much exist around Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and even Neptune. Rings are everywhere. Big gas giants are everywhere. There are some that are much, much bigger than Jupiter. And what deGrasse Tyson is saying there is he's trying to sound like Carl Sagan in terms of we think we're the center, we think we're all that, but we're not really all that. But to say that you would pass the Earth in order to go to Jupiter or Saturn is, I think, the stupidest thing I've ever heard an astronomer say. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say about astronomy, especially planetary astronomy. It's just plain. It's almost incredible that it come out of his mouth. I don't have high hope for you know deep thoughts coming out of Neil deGrasse Tyson, but even by Neil deGrasse Tyson standards, that is a pretty remarkably stupid thing to say. I mean, even if you just put them, even if you could, if you just line up the planets of our solar system, just line them up, you get rocky craters, solid cloud cover. Let's skip Earth for a minute. Shrunken, dust desert vacuum planetoid, a decent sized gas giant, a somewhat smaller gas giant with an interesting set of rings, but by no means an incredible set of. They've discovered an exoplanet with rings that extend out something like 300 or 400 planetary radius. Maybe it's 4,000. It's just nothing but rings, but just a little dot in the center. So Saturn is impressive for our solar system, but it's not the most impressive ring system you can imagine. And you've got Uranus, which is a green haze ball, and Neptune, which is a blue haze ball, and that's it. Just look at the pictures of them taken by space probes, and then you just put Earth next to that, and all of that blue and the complexity and the cloud structure and the raw beauty of the planet. Forget about knowing about the life and everything, just from a sheer pixel by pixel analysis of what is interesting and beautiful. It blows it out of the water, and Tyson is trying to sound so deep, but all he just sounds like is just like a midwit who knows what Carl Sagan said and is trying to sound a bit like Carl Sagan. And even Sagan was wrong about this. It's just a pale blue dot lost in the universe. Is it really? If you could see intelligence, if you could see life, if you had a telescope that could see life, this would be the brightest beacon, certainly within hundreds and hundreds of light years, maybe in the galaxy, maybe in the entire universe, although it's a big universe. It's idiotic. It's an idiotic thing to say, and the reason he says it is not just because he wants to sound like Sagan, but he also wants to say it because it's hip to be kind of anti-human. It's kind of hip to be humans ain't nothing. We're just a flash in the pan. We're a cosmic accident. We're a dust mote in the wind. We're a cancer on the galaxy. We do nothing but killer apes that destroy everything and all of this stuff. And he's sitting there on television. Visual signals being transmitted over long distances using technology and recorded using the movement of electrons through wires, and not even actually through wires, in fields around wires, as it turns out. And thinking that this is somehow cool, like, oh, we're nothing. I honestly, it's that nihilism of a culture that is unique to elitists. It's only the elitists that think this. I remember who was it? Was Prager, maybe I was listening to say, criticizing somebody saying something. He said, you really have to have a postgraduate degree and have that kind of education to say something that stupid. You can't simply say something that is that stupid randomly. That kind of level of stupidity requires a tremendous education. And that's basically what he is, he's and Bill Nye's the same way, Let's all just get on island 120 where we all say the same things, and it's like, no, this place is miraculous. This species is I never cease to be amazed by humans. I'm just so frickin' proud of humans. That's why this HFY humanity F yeah branch of science fiction stories is so intriguing to me. It's like it's all about humans just kicking everybody's butt, and I think there's something to be said for that. I would, when we talk about things like the colonies and some of the things you're talking about with finding something that's more spectacular. So, by the way, the solar eclipse is what led me to all of this. Even if you were to take Earth and make Earth into a sterile ball of rock, you would still visit Earth and go a long way to do it, because there is no other. It is a very strong argument in favor of creation, to be honest with you, that the moon is 400 times smaller and 400 times closer than the sun. If the moon were just a tiny little bit bigger, you would not get a total solar eclipse. You get an occultation. The sun would be blocked out by the moon. If it were a tiny bit, did I say smaller? I meant to say larger. If it were a little tiny bit smaller, you'd have an annular eclipse, and that doesn't do anything. A 99% eclipse, I wouldn't drive 5 miles to see a 99% eclipse. But a total solar eclipse, that matchup is the most spectacular thing in nature. And I think it's the most spectacular thing conceivable in nature, and you cannot have that on a planet that is big enough to have life without a moon that is not only big enough to be the moon, but I mean, the chances are well, they're astronomical. Obviously, when you've got 200 billion stars and 200 billion galaxies, the chance of you having something like this is possible. Now, since you asked me to elaborate on it, I find the chance of something like that happening to be very, very small. I don't want to have any other solar eclipses anywhere in the colony's universe. However, Lord Bio says, after you see a total solar eclipse, you'll understand why our ancestors worshiped the sun and the stars. I'll go further than that. After you see a total solar eclipse, you'll understand why our ancestors developed mathematics, because when that eclipse is over, the first thing you want to do is see another one. And I spent 7 years waiting for this thing, and I just wasn't there. I'm still gobsmacked by it. I'm just gobsmacked. I'm just brokenhearted. That's the only word for it. Just brokenhearted, and I will be forever. And Natasha was saying, get over this, honey. This is going to be one of the saddest days of my life forever. That's not going to change. So, there you go. But what you could do is you could have something that's more of an occultation. But if you have a star that's much more unstable than the sun, so you get a lot more prominence, big prominences, and red dwarf stars are notoriously unstable. That's one of the reasons why the search for life is more difficult. We say the galaxy's got 200 billion suns in it, and that's true. But the vast majority of them are red dwarf stars. And the problem with that is since there's such low energy compared to our sun, the habitable zone is much, much closer to the star. So far, so good. But since you have to be much, much closer to the sun, if you're going to have a habitable zone on a red dwarf stars are inherently unstable, and they throw off a lot of flares, and these flares basically sterilize the planet. So what you're basically doing is you're taking the majority of the suns out of contention for life to evolve or to appear. Then you still got the whole proteins problem. I'd love to have somebody explain that to me. But put that aside. Most of the suns in our galaxy are red dwarfs, and virtually all of them are unstable. And so you can take away that billions and billions and billions. If you go to suns that are hotter than our sun is a G5 class star, OBAFGKM, in order of decreasing energy and heat. If you get much hotter than the sun, if you get much cooler than the sun, the planets have to be colder. They have to be closer. You get the solar flare problem. If you make the sun hotter, then you can have not only a further away habitable zone, but a bigger habitable zone. That's good. But the problem is, very quickly you start getting into suns that put out more energy in the ultraviolet, and some even into X-rays, and then you get a mutation problem, and you get all kinds of problems. You really, I'd like to. Just curious to know if this is a question that can be answered with a one Google prompt. It's not a question of how many suns there are in the Milky Way, how many stars. How many G-type stars in the Milky Way? Call it 7%. estimated 100 to 400 billion stars. So okay, so 20 billion. So it's a tenth of the total population. It's still 20 billion suns in the Milky Way galaxy. That's a lot of stars. About 7% of the galaxy star population is like the sun, G-class dwarfs. That's still a lot of stars. But I'm not talking about life. I'm talking about intelligent life, and I think that requires the moon. Oh, a couple of quick super chats came in from the Sacred Order of Knightly Valor. Did you see the Neil deGrasse Tyson's disastrous explanation of a black hole to a 7-year-old? He rambled about his own PhD dissertation for 5 minutes before remembering the question and giving a cliche answer. No, I didn't. I did see him talking about the HIV situation and saying that, no, you don't understand. Science is about consensus. That's what science is. Science is consensus. And I'm thinking, I don't know what science you studied, but science is not consensus. Science is the consensus breaker, you idiot. It's got nothing to do with consensus. You know, the consensus prior to Copernicus was that the Earth was the center of the universe, and the consensus was wrong. And the consensus was about, how many times has science disproved the consensus? He's arguing for consensus. You need repeatable experimental evidence, and that's what science is. Error-reducing way of thinking, and he just doesn't get it. Not a clue. He's absolutely clueless. Oh, good. Here's some good news from Sad Wings Raging. The Imperium has fallen. Female custodes have just been snapped into existence, and Games Workshop is just fine with lying to our faces about it. So, in one property, I still do have a lot of respect for the Warhammer 40K universe. You've got this race of super warriors called Astartes, and they are made from the strongest male biological stock you can find, and something like 6% of them survive the process, and so on. And so you're dealing with a subset of super warriors who are 7-8 feet tall and, enormously strong, have extra organs implanted in them, and all the rest of it. And then they started having female Astartes, which doesn't make any sense. If you're selecting out of the top 1/2 of 1% of the strongest males on the planet, and only 6% of them survive the process, then why would you go to the half of the planet population that is less strong on average than the strongest half? It's just plain kowtowing to people who don't like being excluded. And this is the thing I hate the most about these feminists and these woke people. They don't actually care. It's not like they really play. It's just that they cannot handle being excluded. No, you can't be part of the Boy Scouts. Well, I want to be a Boy Scout. Well, you can't be a Boy Scout because you're a girl. Well, we'll sue you then. Okay, congratulations, you've done it. You've sued us. Now we have girls in the Boy Scouts. What time can we expect you to come to the next troop meeting? Oh, I'm not interested in being a Boy Scout. I have no interest in doing that at all. I don't want to go outside. It's yucky. I didn't want to be told no. I didn't want to be told, no, you can't have something. So I decided to destroy it. Well, as it turns out, there is a creature that is even more advanced than the Astartes, and these were the Legio Custodes, a form of Astartes that were designed to protect the emperor only. And so these are the kind of warriors that make the Astartes look like pikers. And now Sad Wings tells me that there are female Custodes, because when you've got to guard the emperor, who is not just the leader of the human civilization, he is the psychic defender of us from the gates of hell. His psychic power keeps out the gates of hell 24/7. But when you're going to defend this guy and the entire future of the entire species, you certainly want to make sure that you don't get the best people you can. You want to get a Custodes that looks like the Imperium. Okay, all right. James Graves says, why would an eclipse scare the hell out of anybody? They have been happening since the dawn of our Earth. Yes, James, you know that. because you're an educated man and you have a product of a Western education. But if you did not know that, and and you looked up and the sun was being eaten over time, and then disappeared, and you didn't know what was happening, it would, I would imagine, scare the living bejesus right out of you. The chance of you, the chance, I don't know, it'd be interesting to know what the chance of a person, say an average lifespan of 40 years, 40 or 50 years, if you pre-Western civilization person, I wonder what the chance of a person living to see a solar eclipse in their location is if you have a 40, 50-year lifespan. What's your chance of seeing one, assuming you're outside every day? What's your chance? I bet it's slim. There's certainly never been a solar eclipse in my lifetime that occurred where I was living at the time, and I'm already half again older than old people were. And so you've got no history, you've got no written records, you've got no communications with other tribes. One group of people sees an eclipse, and they get out their clay tablets and start trying to figure out, how to make another one or see another one. But if you'd never seen one, it would scare the hell out of you. Let's not forget that in this goes back well into history, that rites like the Saturnalia and things like New Year's celebrations, all of these things occur at the winter solstice, and including Christmas, which was transplanted onto the Saturnalia. It's virtually certain that Christ was born in the spring, not in December. But the idea that they would take the birth of Christ to the point where, within a few days of where the sun starts to rise, if you just listen to how that sentence flows, where the sun rises, you will, you can make some very powerful, it makes it much easier to export Christianity or any other religion. They all do it when you get grafted on top of existing myths. Now, Steve Whip said Central Texas got 2 in a row. I know there was some place in the country, I thought it was actually closer to Tennessee, where the 2017 line and the 2024 line crossed, where somebody in that 80-mile circle would get to see 2 solar eclipses. But most people wouldn't. And the reason I bring up the solstice and Christmas and all the rest of it is most people watch the sun go down, get lower and lower in the sky every day, and they were not convinced it was coming back again. You would think that Carbondale, Illinois, well, I wish I'd been in Carbondale. You would think that after year after year after year, but what happened was they would see the sun getting lower and lower in the sky, so they would do whatever they would do. Let's say they're going to sacrifice. They're going to have a human sacrifice. And so they have a human sacrifice. And because of the human sacrifice, the sun comes back up again. Now you're stuck. Because what you're convinced it's a sacrifice that turned the sun around. It's what the Aztecs were all about. They're all about blood. It's the worst culture that was ever on the earth, ever. Makes the Nazis look like Girl Scouts. The Aztecs are a horrific culture that was entirely predicated on predation of its neighboring tribes for living human sacrifice in order to get buckets of blood to get the sun to come back up again. And all you really needed to break that chain would be to have 1 year where you couldn't find anybody to sacrifice, and then you miss the sacrifice and everybody's getting ready for the end of the world and the sun comes up anyway. Then the big brains in the village could say, wait a minute now, maybe it's not the sacrifice. But that's scientific thinking. So those kind of astronomical, and when I say those kind of astronomical events, it's really just the solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse is mildly interesting, but it's not jaw-dropping. It's okay. It's the moon gets red and gets dark, and sometimes it gets very, very dark, but It's doesn't. There's not a moment when it's like, oh, you know, the if you lived on the moon and you saw a solar eclipse, in other words, if you saw the Earth pass in front of the sun, you'd see what you see anywhere else in the solar system. You would see this gigantic object just block the sun out, and then it would be dark. You wouldn't see any corona or anything. And then after time passed, it would pop out again, and then they'd be bright again. If you lived on any other rock, you'd see a little tiny speck of a moon passing in front of the sun, but you would not see the perfect block. In fact, not only do the planes of the Earth and the moon and the sun have to be perfectly aligned, the distance from the moon to the Earth, it's an elliptical orbit. So you can have it's called an annular eclipse, where the moon passes directly in front of the sun. Should be a total eclipse, but the moon is at its furthest point in its orbit. It's too small, so there's a ring that goes around the sun, perfectly round ring, and that ring is bright enough so that you can't see anything. And so, you know, it's a miracle. It's a miracle, and I missed it, and I'm never going to get over it. You know, I went through a day of blaming the weatherman, of just saying, hey man, if you had just said cloudy instead of raining, you know, instead of a front, like clear, 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 partly cloudy, raining, 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 raining for the next 3 days, I would have been there. But I missed it, so there's nothing I can do about that. Now on to a description of how awesome it was. Also from Jaser McFarlane. Oh, and another one from Janie Waterman. Great. I'll do them because I have to steel myself to it. Idabel, I want to say, Oklahoma, total solar eclipse report. I'm so sorry Natasha and Bill couldn't make it, and I understand why. My family drove from northern Utah to McKinney, Texas, in hopes that there would be a break in the weather for us to see the total solar eclipse. We woke up on the 8th at 3:15 a.m. and drove over 300 miles to find a break in the clouds. Now, I was perfectly willing to do that. I was expecting to do that. Finally, about 5 minutes before totality, we got 3 miles north of Idabel, Oklahoma, and the clouds parted. This is what it sounds like to me. It's like a scene from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Well, it looks like I missed the boom. I pulled over the minivan, and my wife and my 3 kids, aged 6, 4, and 2, jumped out and witnessed the most beautiful natural wonder of all time. That's what it is. It seemed more intense and more fantastic with my children this time around than with 2017. I'm sure that's true too. We chased that patch of blue sky all morning, and it paid off. Amen. I'm glad you got to see it. I'm very glad everybody else got to see it. I wasn't at the time. At the time, I wanted you all to die. But that didn't last too long. The spirit and feeling that came from seeing a total solar eclipse made my wife and I feel there is no greater natural wonder that denotes the divine creation than a total solar eclipse, aside from human consciousness and the ability to rear children. Well, that is beautifully said, first of all. Beautifully said. Secondly, you're an extremely fortunate man because you had all 3 with you, right? You had the solar eclipse, you had the human consciousness to watch it, and you had the children around, and they'll never forget it either. P.S. I saw Astronomy on Fox Television in a live interview talking about the solar eclipse, saying that it was his 6th time seeing one. Is that our astronerd? My wife and I want to adapt the same tradition and see as many as we can throughout our lifetime. Well, that's the only way I got through it. To be honest with you, that's the only way I was able to get through the week, Jaser, is to say, well, I'm going to see every one of them from now on until I can't. I'm going to see every one of them. I'm just going to plan on it. I'm going to start buying tickets in advance. So somebody said there's one in 2030 in Australia, and there's one in Greenland in 2027. I'm just going to be there for those. And when I'm sick of seeing them, then I don't have to go anymore. But after this one, I said, and coming after your 65th birthday too, it's like, oh, okay, is that my last chance? Who knows? I mean, I know it's not my last chance, likely to be my last chance, but it could have been, and it still could be. So I'm going to become one of those eclipse chasers, and I just want to go where the crowds aren't. They were talking about 6-hour traffic jams on the interstates trying to get into the totality zone, and I was just I had gone on the trip on, we left on Saturday morning, and I had gone disappointed that I and millions and tens of millions of other people had missed the eclipse because of the weather, and it turned out, nope, it's just you. So there you go. Jenny Waterman's here to add to the thrill of Monday. I saw the eclipse too. It stole my heart. Absolutely entrancing. I thought we had longer with it than we did, so I looked away from it. Can you believe it? I could have looked longer. Unbelievable. And Bill, please don't feel bad. I truly only fought for the plan to drive the hour from home to experience 100% versus 99.4% because of what you said. And now I have the memory of the actual heavens being totally, actively supernatural right before your naked eyes. Well, you're very welcome, and I'm very, very glad you did. I'm very, very, very glad that you did. There's nothing like it. There were reports of clouds. I almost didn't go, but it turned out I had not only convinced my loving boyfriend to tag along with me on this adventure, I had an inspired, genuine intrigue in him. So I had inspired a genuine intrigue in him. So we left his family behind, braved whatever traffic there might have been, and we made it. I have yet to catch my breath, and now that I've seen one, I want to see them all. Well, I have to tell you, Janie honestly thought that this would make me feel worse, but it actually makes me feel better. It's great hearing that somebody else, that other people had the experience that I had in 2017 that I wanted to have again. But it's practically like almost like I saw it with you there. So this is lovely. Austin and I have another special memory, just the two of us, thanks to your insight and advice. Thank you so much. You're very, very welcome, and I'm very happy for you. It's me I'm miserable about. On a different subject, Veronica, I miss it too, Bill. I've been so upset about it. Me too, Veronica. We're going to have to get together and start a club, and we'll start drinking. And anytime anybody mentions any word that begins with E, we'll take a hit. I'm with you. I am so with you. I woke up like I said, for 3 days. First thing in my head is, I missed the eclipse. I've been waiting for 7 years. I've been waiting for 7 years, and I missed it. Anyway, back to JD. As I watch and rewatch Empire of Terror, I found that you've either answered my questions ahead already in your writings, that my questions change, or that the answers no longer matter to me. For example, the why of what Lenin did. I know he thought of Marxism as a religion, but that just didn't seem like a good enough reason to me. It's not. Veronica says she got talked out of the drive. Veronica, yeah, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'll come right back to you, Janie. Phil sent me a picture, cloudy sky. It's starting now, cloudy sky. I thought, well, I'm glad I didn't drive 23 hours to see a cloudy sky. That was the gamble. 23 there, 23 back. And then, how did it go? Did you see anything at all? Oh my God, yes, I saw Bailey's beads. Bailey's beads are the little bright spots around the rim of the eclipse when the sun is shining through the valleys and the mountains on the limb of the moon. But anyway, back to this, for the example of, back to Janie. I know Lenin thought of Marxism as a religion, but it just didn't seem like a good enough reason to me. It's not. The reason Lenin did all this was because Lenin was an egomaniac. He was a reptile. He had no human connections to anybody. He had no human emotions. He was about power and theory, and this was his chance for his entire little train set of a universe, his entire tiny little world. No skiing, no kids, no Christmas, no families, no fun reading, no relaxing, no nothing. Revolution, 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 revolution from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to sleep every single day for his life. He was a miserable, horrible, wretched, inhuman monster. And again, I've said this. I thought when I wrote this whole thing would be about Stalin, but it's not. It's about Lenin. Lenin, Lenin, Lenin. Lenin wrote the manual and Stalin followed the instructions. That's it. Lenin. He's a monster. He's the greatest monster in history. He killed more people than Hitler did by a factor of certainly by a factor of 5, and probably more like 10 or 20. I wanted to know why Lenin exacted such judgment on Russians instead of trying to bring communism to Marxist people of Germany, the already industrialized country. Well, because the people in Germany toyed with it, but ended up against it. And, You see, Marx wasn't. I mean, Lenin wasn't determined to bring Marxism to Russia. Lenin was determined to become all powerful someplace on the earth. If you understand that his goal was to be the dictator on planet Earth, then you understand Lenin. He would have rather been the dictator of Germany or Britain or any of these other places, but he was Russian, and Russia was the most destabilized nation. So, and by the way, it wasn't Lenin's idea. The Tsar fell, and Lenin didn't even know about it till he read about it in the newspapers. He didn't knock off the Tsar. The Tsar just abdicated just through his own stupidity. And then Lenin finds himself in Switzerland. He can't get back to Russia. And the German high command says, hey, if we give this guy some money and send him back to Russia, he might actually gain power. And if he gains power, he'll take Russia out of the war. It's exactly what happened. So, there you go. It's all about personal gain. He inverted Marxism. He inverted it in order to make it work in Russia, which is what his April thesis was about. The proletariat will bring about the revolution. Well, there is no proletariat. Well, hold my beer. That was Lenin right there in a nutshell. When I learned that things got bad, bourgeois gloves, the children, my desire for reasons began to thin. Sometimes evil is just evil. And any attempt and a hint of justifying it is a misuse of brain power. Exactly. You'll like the end of episode 7, by the way. Episode 7 is the first of the 2 that are set in the gulags, and that ending I'm very proud of. That's episode 7 is the end of episode 7 is the death of Lenin, episode 6 is here's what Lenin did. This is the Red Terror. Dim the lights because I'm going to do a 25-minute block quote from a guy who was there, and here are some pictures. So. These are revolting pictures of people who have been mutilated and murdered, and they're hard to look at, but they're pictures. And this is what Lenin did. And I don't want to see any more college kids waving the hammer and sickle or any more pictures of Lenin on anything. The same thing goes for Che as well. Rodzilla with a super chat says, not only no smoking on Masters of the Air, but no pinup girls on the planes or in the rooms. It's also wrong. Yeah, Masters of the Air is you would have thought that. Man, I was thinking, well, finally, somebody's going to tell the story of the air war over Europe. I didn't see a single episode. No desire at all, none, to see it. Once I saw what they did with the CG and how it's going to be like, we're going to walk across the sky on flak bursts. It's just not dramatic enough, I guess, losing, 30% of your 40% of your force on one raid. Not enough drama there. We need to amp it up a little bit. Ridiculous. Back again to Janie here. Hopefully someone will scrawl murderer in red paint on Lenin's statue, wherever that is. I think there's one in Oregon. So here's my question. Was this series emotional for you to write? Was it emotional for Natasha? Did you discuss things with her during your research and writing, or was it too hard for her? And will you give her our best? I'll certainly give her your best. Thank you for that. And I'll answer that question in a second. I did not discuss it with Natasha. Natasha is sensitive to these kind of things, and regardless of whether it's in her own country or not, she worries about cats when there are wildfires in Bengal or something. And so no, I didn't share with her about that. Was it emotional for me to write? Yeah, it messed me up. I think it probably permanently. I almost said broke something, but that's not it. And it's not that I was unaware of it. I knew what I wanted to do. That's why I wrote the series. But doing it, it didn't make me rethink humanity. It didn't make me. I didn't get sick at the descriptions of the violence. I've made it a point to try to understand the world as it is, and I've seen horrible things online because that's the world. I've seen people hacked to pieces with machetes. I've seen people set on fire for stealing bicycles. I've seen a lot of stuff because I need to, because that's the world. That's the real world, and that's the consequences of not winning this fight. So I never I never had any kind of like well, I'll never apply the letters PTSD to me under any circumstances, but it wasn't anything like that. I think the thing that the most emotional thing about it was that it wasn't even that this happened to people and these people were murdered and disappeared without a trace. It's that this monstrosity, they don't know what they're doing. The vast majority of the people that vote Democrat have no idea what the end game is for this. That's why I did it. But the part about it that was the hardest was just, I think my favorite, I don't want to give it away, the end of episode 7, when I talk about the consequences of all this right at Lenin's death. It's 1,000 Super Bowls full of people, and you can say that. 100 million people. You can say it's 1,000 Super Bowls, and the only way I could get people to visualize it is at the end of the 7th episode. I say, imagine you're standing outside the Super Bowl, and everybody in the stadium has to file out through one gate, one door. And you have to stand there and wait for every single person in that Super Bowl to file out past you, and you got to get a look at every single person's face. That would take you hours. I don't know how many hours it would take to get everybody out of a stadium one by one, but it would take hours and hours and hours. And you had to look at every single person's face. They'd look them in the eyes, they'd look at you, they'd walk on by. And after you'd done that, after you'd seen every single face on every single person in that football stadium, you'd only have 990 more Super Bowls to go before you get to the end of the actual faces of the actual people that were killed by Vladimir Lenin. Because it wasn't Marx that killed people. It was Lenin that killed people. Marx had a theory. There have been goofy theories throughout history. Lenin was the guy who figured out the only way to make these insane ideas work was through terror. And he understood that the way you sell it is to sell it as righting a wrong, is to sell it as this is justice, that communism is justice. It's for the working people that have been exploited, and they're all going to be murdered. They're all going to live in terror. The very, 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 very best case for the working people of Russia historically in the Soviet Union, the best case was that everybody lost loved ones who were murdered. You survived, but you survived in a life of poverty where you had to stand in line in 60-degree below zero weather to see whether the store had any toilet paper or not. That's the legacy, and that's what he brought, and that's what these professors want. That's what these students want. These green-haired students. This capitalist system, which is so cruel, they want this abolished so that we can all have communism and share everything. The only thing you're going to share is misery, and the only thing that's going to be in abundance is fear. And that is the way it's always played out. And that's the thing that killed me the most. It was just this. I almost said the stupidity of the human race, but it's not the human race. It's the stupidity of. Is that's that great line in Lord of the Rings where they're holed up in Helm's Deep, and Theoden says, "What can one man do against such relentless hate?" Hate, stupidity and envy together. Stupidity and envy. I want that. I don't want to work for it. He's got it. I don't. I want to take it from him. And we'll kill him if we have to. The only thing that gave me any solace in this, and it's pretty cold comfort, but it is comfort, and that is that every one of these murdering bastards died a horrible death, including Stalin and Lenin. They all died horrible deaths, and most of them died. Most of the executioners were executed. They killed 5 million people, and then next, they're in the cells writing letters to Stalin, begging for their lives. They're being taken out to be executed. They're crying. They're collapsing to their knees. They're blubbering. They're holding on to to the belts. They're begging for phone calls. They're begging for a second chance. Let me go live in Siberia. I'll do this, Comrade Stalin, blah, blah, blah. And then so they got to know the same terror that they inflicted on millions of people, but that's a small return on investment as far as the justice of it is concerned, but it's something anyway. Lenin, the last year and a half of his life were miserable. Not miserable enough, but miserable. You just look at the history of the world. It's like, if you could remove slavery, you can't remove slavery. Slavery has been there from the beginning. If somebody had invented the cotton gin 100 years earlier, and you did not need to import African slaves to America, that particular subset of history, and communism, if you'd gotten those two things off the table, the world would be unrecognizable. It'd just be unrecognizable. But communism has killed more people than war. War has been around a lot longer than that, but the population of the planet was much smaller, and so what was when people killed at Waterloo, or thousands, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 at Gettysburg. It's a busy day in Novosibirsk, in 1938. So I'm what I'm angry at is I'm angry at the stupidity, at the willful blindness. That's what it is, It's ego, the ego, the ego, the willful blindness of it. I know it's killed millions of people, but I want stuff, and I don't want to work for it. And I don't like the fact that people have things and I don't. So out of sheer, it's so funny how they talk about capitalism being about greed. Capitalism, free market economy, you can make as much money as you want to, but you have to work for it. You put stuff in, you get stuff out. Greed is when you decide, I'm going to back a system where I will take things from other people, and if they resist, then I'll kill them. And that person's working themselves to death, but they've got all the nice stuff, so I'm going to take that stuff because I want it, but I don't want to work for it. And you tell me which one is greedier, The person who wants to work 80 hours a week in order to have a nice house or a nice car, or the person who wants to take that person's car without doing any work at all. Just take it by voting it to himself. So, Lady Janie here says, I knew they're talking about the statue of Lenin, which is in Seattle apparently. I knew they were sickeningly liberal, but I didn't know they loved actual monsters. See, here's the thing, Janie. They don't know that they love actual monsters. They don't know that. That's what the series is for. If they knew what Lenin did, they wouldn't have a statue of Lenin there. They don't know what Lenin did. They've been told, but they don't believe it. They don't want to believe it. It's inconvenient. So they don't really look at it. But they don't know what Lenin did, because if they did, that statue would be torn down. They think that Lenin went into a corrupt system, made a paradise for working people. One of the most remarkable things about the series was hearing a number of cases, and you can only do so many, but just the endless series of people who had been prisoners under the Tsar, pining away for the days of when they were prisoners under the Tsar. I forget what the numbers were, but it was something like the requirement for a minimum ration of food for a worker in the gulags was something on the order of 20 times higher than it was as a prisoner of the Tsar. So if you had to move so many cubic feet of earth, shovel so many cubic feet of earth in order to get your workers' standard quota helping of gruel under the Tsar, under communism you had to do 20 times that much work, which is not possible. It wasn't ever meant to be possible. The gulags were execution camps. They were execution camps. They didn't have gas chambers because on some level, they're smarter than the Germans. They said, why go to all the trouble of killing these people when we can work them to death? 3 months, about what it took you, about 3 months. By the time you're 3 months, your health is broken, and then you're just taken out and shot, or they just leave you out there. Plenty of room to leave people out there. And I think all I want in revenge against these liberals is I just want them. I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want anything bad to happen to those people. I would just like everybody who's in favor of communism to spend a week in a gulag. That's all I want. A week. It wouldn't take a week, but that's what I'd like. 3.5 days would do it. You know, here. This is what you're working for. Let me know what time you want to go back to the brutal capitalism. By the way, one of the most striking ironies in this episode, in this series, and I want to say it's in episode 7 as well. One of the most striking ironies is during this mass starvation where millions of Russians are starving to death, millions and tens of millions of lives were saved because food was carted over around the world to the Soviet Union. The food was donated, and it was shipped and it was distributed by the United States of America to a regime that wanted to destroy the United States of America. And there are hundreds of millions of Russians alive today who have no idea whatsoever that the only reason they're on this planet is because of the American Relief Organization headed by Herbert Hoover, as Dave Big Booty points out. And the only reason that stopped was because Lenin was taking the grain that American taxpayers were paying for and shipping around the world in order, out of the kindness of their hearts, to stop starvation on the other side of the planet. He was taking that grain and selling it on the international market because he didn't have any hard currency because his money was worthless. And so he was taking American grain donated by American taxpayers to save starving Russians, and he was selling that food on the international market so that he could have hard cash, so that he could start the Comintern, which was a theoretical institution designed to overthrow the government of the United States and Great Britain and all the rest of it. So think about that. You're in charge of a country. Millions of your own people are starving because of your miserable theories. Your archenemy comes over and feeds your people, and you steal the food that he's giving you to feed your people in order to get money to overthrow his system because his system is cruel and unfair. Think about that for a while. Billy just found a joke of books from behind the Iron Curtain. It's from Ian Nolan. Oh, looking forward to that. Here's a link. I got to check that out. That sounds great. I love these books. The Russian humor is my favorite thing about the Russian people, how they cope with some of this horror is beyond belief. So I've got a link, and I'm looking forward to getting it. Thank you. How did Natasha like Sedona? She liked Sedona very much. Natasha is very different from me in a lot of ways. She's extremely... boy, I sure don't want to say spiritual because of all the hippy-dippy conversation. You know, she's very extremely curious and very sensitive to things. She's a tremendous photographer. She's taken up painting, and I think she's a very good painter. Then she's taken up jewelry making. I think she makes beautiful jewelry. She just makes things pretty. That's what she does. She just makes the world beautiful. And so Sedona is, for a gray tribe kind of guy, it's a little bit much. But it is filled with nothing but art stores, art supplies, and galleries and all sorts of things. So she just loved it there, and she loved the Painted Desert as well. The Painted Desert, by the way, is spectacular, but like Barringer Crater, it's considerably smaller. Many times driving through the Painted Desert, I looked down and I thought, this is a perfect location for Lost in Space to put the little toy chariot, because all of the buttes and all of the mountains and everything is perfect. It's just small. And it is it's hard to believe it's natural. I mean, it really is amazing. There's the Petrified Forest National Park. You've got these. You're walking amidst a forest where the wood has been buried and absorbed all of these minerals, and all the minerals replaced all of the organics. So you've got wood that is made out of stone. It looks like wood because it was, and the minerals over millions of years replaced all the wood fibers. Now you've got trees that are made out of stone. That's what a petrified forest is. But what I didn't know was that those petrified trees were petrified when T-Rex was walking around, was it 80 million years ago or something? That petrified forest happened 400 million years ago, and that's how old that stuff is. And it's kind of cool to just put your fingers on something that's been around that long. It's kind of cool to put your fingers on a piece of a nickel iron asteroid too, because that's where this thing came from. So there's that. Jacob Belchuk and a David Newland, and then we'll call it a day. Jacob Belchuk. Hail Bill, hail Jacob. Once many moons ago, someone on TSL asked you the following questions. What 3 people, living or dead, would you like to have dinner with, and why? If you could travel back in time to view any 3 historical events, what would they be? Well, the first one would be the 2024 eclipse. I'm curious if your answers have changed these many moons. Glad to have you back. A week without stratosphere content leaves me itching like an addict. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much for those kind words. I'll just do this off the top of my head. The 3 historical events, the first one that really comes to mind, putting the snark away, is in 1966. I want to say it was the Leonid meteor shower. People are aware of meteor showers. Most people are aware of what it is as the Earth goes around the sun. Its orbit takes it through the tail of comets that have come and gone. So these comets leave debris, patches of debris in the orbit. And as we go through those patches of debris once a year, every year at the same time, we get an increase in meteors, a somewhat of an increase in meteors. If you've been told that there's a meteor shower tonight and you go outside expecting a meteor shower, you're going to be brutally disappointed. On an average night, if you're lying on your back looking at the sky, on an average night you'll see 6 meteors an hour. During a meteor shower, a good one that might go to 20 or 30, maybe even 50. But the Leonid meteor shower in 1966 was 100,000 meteors an hour. It just happened. The Earth went through a particular clump. Hasn't happened before since, but 100,000 meteors per hour. And drawings of the 1966 Leonids are beyond belief. I would like to have seen that very much. I would like to have seen, I don't know if you want to argue whether this is a prehistoric event. I would very much like to have seen the astronaut said the same thing happened in November of 2001. I don't think you saw 100,000 an hour astronaut. If you did, I'm impressed, because I have not heard anything that was even close to that. But I have seen nights where you're seeing meteors every couple of seconds or two, but 100,000 an hour is just on fire. This is not a particularly historical event. I would like to have seen the Battle of Cannae from a hill on a horse, a fast horse, and I think probably one of the most spectacular things. I would like to have seen the Chicxulub impact. I would like to have been able to teleport out of there before it got to me. It would have been a sight to see. But one of the things that's most amazing in the history of the planet is that the Mediterranean Sea was a basin, and that the area now called the Pillars of Hercules, the gap between Gibraltar and North Africa, that was a solid wall. And I'd much rather see Chicxulub than Tunguska. Tunguska was just a glorified Chebelisk or whatever that was. But I don't know how long ago it was. It wasn't too terribly long ago. The wall that held the Atlantic Ocean out of the enormous sub-sea level valley that we now call the Mediterranean Sea. That Mediterranean Sea was a a valley that was well below sea level, well, hundreds of feet below sea level, and there was a essentially a wall between Gibraltar and North Africa. And one day that wall broke, and the Atlantic Ocean came into the Mediterranean. And they say that when they did the calculations, they said that when that mountain range broke, the water pressure was so great that the water came through the water. Once the crack occurred, the water pressure was so great that the bolt of water came in faster than the speed of sound, and that the Mediterranean filled up in a matter of days or weeks. That would have been an event to see. As far as the three people go, it's Mark Twain without question. I kind of feel like almost like I would take the dinners the same way I would take the eclipses. I'd take Mark Twain, and then I'd take Twain again, then I'd probably take Twain a third time. But without question, Mark Twain first. Without question. Nobody's even close. I'm trying to think of a second. Churchill, probably. And there's somebody I just remember thinking I really liked. I just happened to be watching, just by sheer coincidence, last night I was watching Hal Holbrook's Mark Twain Live. And Holbrook kind of stylizes Twain a lot. But, and it's not exactly a zip-bang performance. But there are moments there where just that wit, just the perspective, you know. Sam Clemens created this character, and once he had the character created, he could just get laughs out of anything. And he was told something like he was made an honorary member of. I don't think it was Oxford. He was made an honorary member of Oxford, but some secret society. And he said the only two people that have ever done that before him were some other guy and the current Prince of Wales. And Twain said, "Well, the Prince must be thrilled to hear." That's just genius. And by the way, you should look it up. It's on YouTube. Mark Twain Live. The entire second act of that is Hal Holbrook reading Huckleberry Finn as Mark Twain. And Huckleberry Finn's decision to help Jim is some of the most astonishingly beautiful writing that's ever been committed to paper. And these idiots are talking about how we have to get rid of Huckleberry Finn because it uses the N-word. And it's like, you idiots, you don't understand. You don't have a clue, do you? The entire point of Huckleberry Finn is that this kid is sure that he is going to go to hell because he's helping an N-word. Don't you understand that? That this humanity that Huck discovers with Jim overrides everything that he ever believed and was told in churches and by his government, that his decision to help Jim escape doesn't just mean he could face criminal charges. Huck Finn believes he is going to hell because he's decided he'd rather help Jim than turn him in, when he's been told that turning him in is the right thing to do. And the reading closes with Huck saying, "Well, if helping Jim means I'm going to hell, then I guess I'm just going to have to go to hell." It's the most anti-racist story ever written. It's the most anti-racist moment ever written. And these idiots are trying to, well, that's why they're trying to ban it, obviously, because that's exactly what it is, and they know it. They know it. They know what it is. They're not trying to ban it because Huck uses the N-word. They're trying to ban it because it shows that this argument was made and won 100 years before they were born, and they can't have that. Can't have it. They can't have the most eloquent condemnation of slavery come from the mouth of a old white dead straight Christian male. And I said Christian because he certainly had a lot of beliefs about humans and God, and a lot of, I mean, his baby boy died at 19 months. Two of his three daughters plus his wife died. He had a lot of bitterness and he had a lot of things to say, but he would, and I think he was plenty angry at God for a fair amount of time. But he never talked about God as if he wasn't there. He just talked about him as if he should have known better. I wonder if God didn't create man because he was so disappointed with the monkey. That kind of thing. Rodzilla says the 66 Leonids had 40 meteors per second. In any event, I would love to have seen what you saw, Astronerd. I'm sure it was spectacular, but in any event, that was it. So Twain, Churchill, and yeah, Twain, Churchill, and Norm Macdonald. Without question. I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier. Without question. Twain, Churchill, and Norm Macdonald. Especially Norm. That one would have been a lot of fun. I miss him very much. Okay, so back to, I think we got one more to go. Call it a night here. David Newland. Hi, Bill. Hail, Bill. In a follow-up to the awesomely creaky Welcome to Pookie Park video in Ephemera, on my website there's a thing called Ephemera, which I haven't updated since I've been working on the script. That's way overdue. But Pookie Park was that AI-generated amusement park, which is absolutely terrifying. I thought you might be interested in a new trend on YouTube. Several channels are including abandoned films, cloud gaming, and dog people productions are using similar techniques to create faux movie trailers for modern movies as if they'd been made in the 1950s. Funny you should mention that, because I just found abandoned films about 3-4 days ago, and I've seen all of their stuff. So what they'll do is they'll do a trailer for Lord of the Rings if it was made in 1950s, or Star Wars. I've seen Star Wars in the 1920s and that kind of thing. It's really cool. My question is, how long do you think we will be in this uncanny valley period where this sort of generated animation will be creepy, and how soon will a state-of-the-art progress to where creations like this will visually appear as normal as any other film? I suspect story-wise we're decades off from anything AI-generated getting there, but I think visually it'll be much sooner. It will be much sooner. David, there is already software out there. I forget the name of it. It is AI software. It did a scene of a bazaar, like an Asian bazaar with people shopping, hundreds of people, and it's faultless. Did one of an Asian woman walking down a street scene with a rain on the sidewalk, and it's faultless. It doesn't have that super creepy, which I really kind of like as a creepy factor, that surreal evolution of the images where the faces are constantly changing and morphing. It's just rock solid. So I forget the name of that software, but it's already here, and this is what I think is going to be the way it's going to really turn the colonies from a CG project into a film project, a real project. We're not going to do it real, I don't think, but I think the CG, the AI image quality is now so solid that if I rendered everything out as computer graphics, it would look like computer graphics. But then if I told AI to make this into photographs, it would. So there's that. Lapco92 said a certain guy from Nazareth might be fun dinner guest. No one ever thinks of him on these questions. Well, that's because I kind of consider him to be somewhat out of my league, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a profoundly good observation. I suppose if there was anybody you could sit down and have an hour with, that would be it. You're right, nobody considers it. And the reason I didn't consider it was because I understand this whole I'm not worthy thing is kind of the entire point. But it would be that would be something, wouldn't it? That would be something. So I'll see if I can find that latest thing, because I think the answer is to basically now render everything out as computer graphics, run it through the AI filter, tell it not to invent anything, just make this face, remember this face. I showed some AI of like these Viking warriors in red helmets or red velvet chrome helmets, and the faces are perfect. So we're there. Is it Sora? Thank you, Chris LSR. Sora is the name of the software, and I haven't checked on it in a month, so there's probably been an awful lot of cool stuff that's happened since then. So let me just set this up so I don't forget it later. Hey, look who's streaming. Yeah, it looks really, really good. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I really can't. I'm looking forward to viewing this. Here's what's interesting about this. I haven't played with it at all, but I'm about to. I've done it for thumbnails using much less sophisticated software than Sora. But what's kind of fun about this is these images are predicated. The better the image is because of the prompt. And so in a weird sort of way, the best writers become the best directors. The more detail you can put into the writing, the more evocative you can make it. You can put monkey in the snow, but if you were to write, a wounded macaque with a swollen right eye, in a snowdrift, with overlooking the fjords, and you just keep adding. You can write your way into some beautiful pictures. So I'm going to have to get into this Sora, and I'm going to be doing that very quickly. I might be able to do it quickly enough to make it part of the Major Mace Mattingly. But right now, I still haven't painted that wall. I was going to do it before I go, and I've been back and I still haven't done it. So I'm going to have to get that painted tomorrow, because I've got a screen that's ready to go up there, and then we'll get these, the first of these story mechanics out, and we'll take it from there, I think. Okay, well, that'll do it, I think, for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, made possible by the members here at BillWhittle.com. Thank you all for your support over the years, and for the kind words, and I'm very grateful. I'm very happy to see, especially, Janie talking about how wonderful it was, and very proud to have been able to be a small part of that experience, and I hope if you did get to see it, it had the same effect on you it had on me. So I'm just consoling myself by saying I'm just going to have to fly my Learjet up to Nova Scotia to see the total eclipse of the sun, and that's a goal that I have a couple years to get ready for. Veronica, did I get your super chat? I did not. Let's go back up. I will not leave super chats untouched if I can help it. Oh, thank you. From Veronica, who with me went through the lament of missing the eclipse. Very, very kind. $20 super chat says, I buy lunch, but this will only cover a snack. Take care, friend. Thank you, Veronica. That's extremely kind of you. You didn't have to do that, but yeah. How about if we split it and we'll buy a couple of bottles of cheap rot gut and just go sit somewhere out in a field and drink and complain. Sounds like a perfect evening to me. All right, guys, thanks very much for joining us. I said Stratosphere Lounge and I said Stratosphere Studio. I lose track of what stratosphere we're in sometimes. But whichever one we're in, this is the end of it. So thanks again for the super chats. Thanks for all the rest of the kind words and everything. And we will see you guys soon. So we'll say goodbye to our friends here at, let's just say goodbye to our friends on Twitch first for a change. Thanks, Twitch. we'll see you Thursday for the Stratosphere Lounge. So until then, keep your powder dry, and we'll see you later. Okay, YouTube, you know the drill. I'm gonna go to the Stratosphere Studio screen, and then I'll probably leave the stream on for another hour until I catch a glimpse of somebody saying, "Will somebody please tell this boomer to turn the thing off?" Labco again, DVD. I know I'll get to it. I promise. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you here on Thursday night. Okay, bye bye.